So how are you today, Rob?
Dana, thanks for spending a little time with me today. It's always crazy here as we get to the end of a quarter, but the market's not sitting still, so I'm happy to take some time.
Great. I'm
Where are you
really
based?
happy. And I'm in Barcelona. I'm in Spain.
I've been to Barcelona a couple times.
Okay.
Just great walking. I love the architecture is fabulous. I've got to obviously I want to get back there because the big fancy Gothic cathedral is, almost done. I think it's supposed to be done in the next couple of years. So we'll have to get back there at some point soon.
Exactly. Yeah, I've just been there last week with some of my friends came to visit me. So yeah, been there.
Excellent.
Yeah. Where are you based at?
I'm in Eastern Tennessee,
Hmm.
which is on the basically just on the west side of the Appalachians.
Okay.
So southeast. Generally, it's mountains, lakes, lots of woods, so good hiking. And I'm a bit of an outdoors person, so that works out well for that.
Okay. Yeah. So Rob, you have this very interesting career in technology. I can say that you are a visionary. As we've been, like exchanging some messages, and I told you that I've been, like I noticed one of your keynote speeches at one of the events where you spoke about transformative force of artificial intelligence, and it
Yep.
was 2021, and it was like it was already like a lot of talks about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but it was not that top trend as it is now. So I believe that you have this vision of tech. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about yourself for those of our listeners and viewers who
Sure.
haven't met you before, and what are you specifically doing at Intel?
Sure, absolutely. So I lead I've had an interesting career over a lot of years in a lot of different spaces. 10 years at IBM, focused in the advanced analytics space. So doing data science and, the techniques that we now just all broadly throw into the AI category. I was involved in the early days of that before it was popular, when mostly it was people that, we used to joke it was all these people wearing white lab coats that understood statistics. And we used to say, oh, well, don't ever let them out of the back office. And now, of course, everybody has effectively, we used to talk about the shortage of people that know data science. And we don't have that problem anymore. My role at Intel is very much aligned to the whole evolution we've had in this technology space, where we take these emerging technologies and we figure out how to apply them to discrete industry problems. It's nice to have, white papers and, theoretical concepts of what's going on, which from a CS point of view is critical for innovation. But when these technologies make an impact is when they can be applied to discrete business problems and put together in such a way that they can be adopted by the masses. And I don't just mean the consumer masses, I also mean the business masses. I mean, it's great to say that I'm going to build a technology and it's going to work well for the top 20 companies in the world. But how does it hit the grocery store, in downtown Barcelona? How does it impact? How do we apply these technologies to, $100 million mining company? These are the real issues of where we blend together technology and industry to create solutions. At Intel, that's what I do. I work in the ecosystem to blend together and speed to market the acceleration of emerging technologies like AI, blend it into and with the value added skills of the Intel ecosystem so that these technologies go from conceptual, nice on a PowerPoint, but now put them into the realm of the real world.
Yeah, that's all very exciting. So you're director of Edge AI solution at Intel. So
Mm-hmm.
these like two things are very exciting: edge technology, right? Edge
Yes.
compute and artificial intelligence combined together. We know that all the data is on the edge. Catching the data, being able to analyze it, right, can be very transformative to many
Mm-hmm.
organizations, many industries, and also blending it, leveraging AI can bring huge benefits. So tell us more. So you mentioned already this retail kind of case study, right, about the retail store, how you can actually
Sure.
catch the data. What are other cases, and how do you specifically foresee, or how do you bring the benefit, the value to the business?
Sure. The important thing, and the reason I always end up with retail as an example that we start with, is often it's things that people can understand. And if you're getting into a conversation in any sector, you have to start with breaking down these abstract concepts into things that people can get an understanding of. And the challenge with AI is that it's something where people are like, oh, I know, it's like Chat GPT, and it's just helping us, make up things, and they're hallucinating, and they read things in the newspaper, and they go, well, that's probably not something that we need to touch. The important thing associated with applying these technologies to a sector is to understand the experience you're trying to change.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go shopping as a consumer, you have certain expectations about what you'd like. Do you like waiting in line when you have only 5 items in your cart?
Of course not.
No. You expect to have a special way of engaging in that store because you only have 5 items. Maybe you'll do a self-checkout. You, as a consumer, could be frustrated when you are running into the store, your home goods store, for example, and you're trying to find that one bolt that's going to help you, reattach your dishwasher so that it doesn't rattle all over your house. But you can't find anybody to help you. That's a frustration. The experience is broken. What AI does is it enables us to insert embedded analytics right where that experience happens. That's why we talk about the edge. The edge is, yes, it's certainly about edge computers and having server technology out there, and we can talk about how the data is generated on the edge. You can't do everything on the cloud. That's a technology statement. But I'll go right back to some of the roots that we talked about in the old days of analytics. The edge is where experiences happen. It's where value is created. It's where value is captured. And so if you're a business, you're looking at the places where people do things in the real world. They're engaged in processes with customers. And so when we can look at ways and we look at holes in processes at specific discrete locations, that's where the innovation really happens. And that's why AI and edge smash together so well, because it allows us to look through the lens of that experience that we all have, whether you're on a cruise ship, whether you're a business to business guy, you're working in a call center. All of these are real discrete places we can picture in our heads. And that's why innovation with AI, ends up being something that's practical for those sectors.
Yeah, those are very interesting. The practical application of the technology, right, and the enhancing user experience, right, the being able to identify these pain points and actually deliver more value. That's very interesting and critical for innovation, as you put this. How do you so? At the same time, there is a question about the sensitive data that we are able to catch, right? And so, from the Intel perspective, how do you deal with this question?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing to remember is that AI is absolutely an ethics trap for a lot of organizations, for a lot of agencies, for a lot of governments. We have to be concerned about topics like data privacy, European GDPR. There's discussions of legislation like that going on all over the world. And the key thing that we've got to be thinking through is, what is the proper use of this data? And also, what's the element, what am I trying to do with that data, and how do I focus only doing that with it? I'll give you a case in point. Machine vision is one of the fastest growing AI workloads there is. And the reason is because of the richness of the kind of information you can get out of a camera. I mean, here we're having a conversation, you're thousands of miles away, but it's like you're sitting in my house, okay? And that connection at a human level is the value of video context. But if I record this and I store this later and then I take an algorithm and I copy your face and use it as a bad actor to do bad things, that's an ethics trap, right? We don't want to do things like that. What we have to do is understand discreetly what we're doing. And when we apply these technologies, make sure that we not only have the governance inside our organization to ensure we're doing it right, but we also practically understand that we don't have to always store all the data. We don't have to keep it all. If you're, for example, looking at how we use cameras, for example, to queue up dynamic advertising. There's a lot of places where if you walk past a screen now in Las Vegas or other places, there's a little embedded camera. And what it's doing is it's sensing, oh, you're walking by, based upon your walk, we think you're a man. And so what we're going to do, because we have a model that says that's what a man walks like, we're going to talk about the cigar bar. But if the woman walks by and she walks differently, in fact, we can tell because she looks like she's walking in high heels, they're going to pop up an advertisement, not about the cigar bar, maybe about the Bulgari jewelry store. Those are the kinds of things. And oh, by the way, I don't have to capture the video. I'm not storing that information. And that's the difference with analytics. It's about the value of inference for discrete problems. Everybody focuses on, we got to get everything to the cloud, and Intel is, firmly committed to the fact that what we need to be able to do is leverage the compute out where the real world is. The real world is not the cloud. The real world is where we live, breathe, eat, cook, work. And that's the element then where edge compute makes a difference and where we can leave the data. We don't have to get the data somewhere else because that's where the problems start to happen.
I don't know if you've heard that recently, just a couple of days ago in EU, they have passed AI Act, where they try to impose regulations. And, the example where you mentioned about the man walking and a woman walking, right? So they will be exposed to different types of advertisement. So
Yep.
one of the areas of the regulation is so AI is prohibited to use in influencing personal autonomy and decision making. Would that case, like where you expose different advertising, would that be the case? And how do you think these type of regulations will impact the business environment?
I think we're going to see a classic whiplash like we do in any regulations. Okay, so we've been massively ungoverned associated with AI, and we're going to probably whip all the way over to, okay, we're massively overgoverned, and then it'll balance out in the interim. And it'll probably, I hate to say it, it'll probably realistically be different in a lot of different countries. The role of advertising as a mechanism to roll out technologies in areas that are underserved, for example. We want mobile networks available and internet available all over the United States, but who wants to pay for it? Okay, well, if they can get a state to give a contract to somebody that says, yeah, as long as you provide this, we'll make sure you can leverage advertising revenue in that context. I think there'll be a push and a pull on those issues. And the idea that we can, I'll just say, use terms like we're going to absolutely, you can't, here's the question. What is the definition of personal autonomy? I don't disagree that that's a really good vision, but the devil's in the details. It's going to be how does that get implemented? Where are the test cases? What was the intent behind it? And I think that's one of the reasons why, a company like Intel is leading a lot of industry thought leaders, large integrators, our hardware companies to put ethics first into the discussion. Because if we don't make the recommendations of how those things work, and Intel works very closely with the US government on these topics, leads coalitions in this area, that's in the end one of our responsibilities as a technology leader. We talk about the siliconomy as the fact that the compute is the heart of so many different industry value that we just expect, there's a responsibility that comes along with that. But I expect it to whiplash a little bit, and I think it's going to come in a case by case basis. There's no one size fits all.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. So there will be, as you said, also the definition of personal autonomy, right? We can actually argue a lot about that, right? Whether you are like right now, without even applying artificial intelligence, whether all our decisions are our own or they are impacted by, different factors. So
Yeah, and there's good reasons for that kind of discretion to be put in things, because the worst thing we can have is, I mean, we saw this in the 2000s. What happens when the government overreaches, especially in the use of analytics? Well, you end up with defectors, saying that there's bad actors in the government doing things with data they shouldn't. I mean, in many ways, some of these regulations that we're talking about aren't just about protecting the consumer, but it's about protecting the citizen from the government. And I think that's an element that we also have to keep in mind.
Yeah, totally agree with you. The promise of edge technology and also artificial intelligence combined together, there is a huge promise to businesses. But what is it that you, from your work, day-to-day communication with customers, you see? What is the pushback from businesses? Is it that easy and simple to explain all the benefits and the value to the businesses?
It's an interesting challenge, and we're in an interesting phase right now, of course, because when organizations think about AI, they immediately think about the cloud. Okay, and that's because that's where model building happens. Typically, that's what's happening. We're building analytics in the cloud. We've been doing it for decades that way. Even if it wasn't the cloud, we had big data center servers where we were doing big data. Remember big data? And then big data got IoT'd, and now we had IoT data. IoT data was the edge, right? Data from sensors.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we were pulling that, figuring out what levels of data we could get up to the cloud and all those kinds of things. The challenge that we're typically seeing from clients comes down to, one, can they link a practical business outcome to their deployment of AI? How can they get their head really wrapped around, this is what I want to change? Okay. The second thing we end up with is, okay, I have a vision for how I'm going to change it. Now, how do I have to change my people and change the way my people and processes work to support that new way of doing things? And sometimes that's actually the hard bit. The technology is not that difficult. I'm oversimplifying, but if I can build a model myself, given enough training data, I can learn how a good weld versus a bad weld works. Back in the early days of advanced analytics, 2010, 2011, we were doing things on quality control. Using, taking data from wafers and using it and analyzing what was going on. Can we predict whether we were having a quality problem or not? We've evolved some of that. Now we have real-time machine vision. The challenge is still not the technology. It's how are you going to deploy that into your process? Can you figure out how to, train people in a different way? So when it works well with like our partner like Eigen. Eigen's one of our AI ISV ecosystem partners. They've accelerated their quality control software on Intel. But then what they do is they go in and they actually look at the quality management processes for manufacturing companies.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk to them not just about the technology, but about how the processes change when you incorporate machine vision based quality control. How does it change the way your workers think? What's the workflow process that shifts? What are the new metrics you need to be thinking about? And when the businesses understand that, they realize, oh my gosh, this just saved me a labor problem. It saved me time. My field people, my quality control managers feel like they have more control. So it can be very empowering if we do it right. The reality is, though, it's not a technology only problem. It's how do we bring together the practical industry knowledge with the technology. Where it breaks is when it's only one of those doing something.
Absolutely love it. How you put this. So it's not the technology, it's actually being able to distinguish what is the pain point and how to apply
Right.
this technology. Yeah,
That's right.
that's a great point, Rob. I heard that Intel has announced this new Edge platform,
Yep.
right, that allowing many enterprises to develop, deploy, run, secure their AI applications.
Mhm.
Can you maybe how specifically can companies benefit from leveraging that platform to enhance the user experience and tackle many like cost effectiveness and other?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is Intel's been in the software sector for a long time. We have thousands of software developers, maybe not the way that the modern computer science major thinks about software, but the modern computer engineer still gets trained on. Because when you think about the ways that systems are built, they start all the way down at the gates of how a chip works. Or and
Mhm.
that's how CPUs are created. And our software layers have always operated, at that. How do we leverage that silicon in really unique ways to make those workloads fast, efficient, and impactful and secure? What we've done in the context of our software development is that's over time it's layered on top of itself many different um, aspects so that we can simplify the development life cycle so that industry experts that build applications don't have to go down into the weeds of how we call acceleration on a chip. We've developed things like our OpenVINO capabilities that is all designed about accelerating things on x86, and that's just an example of just a library. But now think about the application of what it means to really build a comprehensive distributed application. I have to know what's running out on the edge. I have to manage it. I have to make sure that I've got, compatibility across heterogeneous compute platforms. It's nice to think that the whole world is greenfield and I can just, buy a brand new Dell box, or buy a hardened industrial computer from Siemens, and I'm just going to put all new ones out there and know that it's always going to work. That's not how the real world is. We're dealing with a lot of brownfield infrastructure. And so, how do we manage those heterogeneous environments without overcomplicating the mind of the developer? That's where these repeatable platforms are really critical. And what in our research, with communication with partners like Accenture, the Indian SIs, Deloitte, our hardware partners, their comments to us is you can really simplify the application development lifecycle for us if you're willing to take on more of these attributes. And if it's been pre-validated on Intel hardware, that reduces bugs, which compresses the amount of time that it takes to roll out new software. And particularly with all the emerging technology, I can, go download new models off of GitHub. There's more than 100,000 AI startups in the United States alone. I need to be able to be ready to drop different things in and know that they're going to work. And I think that's really the concept behind what we're doing with that Edge platform. It's all about the scalability of the developer ecosystem so that they don't have to become experts from bottom to top. I mean, the reality is if you want to have a really good secure edge platform, you better know how to call the security functions that are embedded in your Intel Xeon chip. If you don't, you have a higher risk of being impacted by bad actors. You can either read all the stuff and do it yourself, or you can trust something that's been built, on purpose to accelerate somebody like you.
So would that be correct? Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but this platform is the way, in a way, pre-built tools that you need to pick and choose what works best for you and apply to your business, or that is
I
not
mean,
exactly.
the best thing to think about associated with what it is, and let's not get into the specific technologies. I think the important thing is in the context of an architectural topology to deploy something that's going to be touching 1,000 endpoints. Okay. We talk about the retail example. We're going to have locations all over. We'll talk about a smart city. How many parking lots are in Barcelona? Okay. Every one of those has a computer behind it,
Exactly.
figuring out how many people are parked and are we getting the right amount of charges and all that kind of thing. When I want to deploy AI types of capabilities, I need that consistency. And so we've implemented the consistent, let's put it this way. I've got a bucket, I'm oversimplifying. We have a container running out on the edge, and it has things that have been pre-validated that work in it. We know this operating system works. We know these deployments of analytics work in specific ways. So if you deploy certain things, it leverages it. It's leveraging specific security paradigms. And that standardizes then the ways I can deploy distributed applications.
Got this. How do you see the next step for the businesses? Do you educate them? Like, how do you make them realize that they can actually reap all this, like great business outcomes if they actually?
It's funny because I think part of the responsibility, and I live in the channel ecosystem, so I'm working with our big partners as they start to figure out, hey, how do I take advantage of this? How do I grow my own business? They want to sell some of this stuff, okay? We have a lot of people and a lot of businesses out there pushing rope. And that analogy is, I think, apt because pushing a rope is not very effective. You really need a rope pulled in order for it to make an impact. The challenge then is how do we train the vendor ecosystem, the technologists, and that can include the people that are the expert technologists in a business, to do better discovery. And what I mean by that is, how do I talk to you about something in language you understand? How do I talk to you about the experiences you have and where the gaps are? Technologists love to jump to solving the problem. Engineers at heart, what they want to do is they want to start, if they're coding people, they want to code. If they're blueprint people, they want to make blueprints. If they're mathematicians, they want to do equations. That's what engineers do. They want to solve the problem. But problems are only well solved if we really understand what the problem is. And that means asking questions. That means dialoguing with people in language they understand. And not talking about the bits and bytes. That's what we're spending a lot of our time at Intel doing. It's educating our channels, educating our vendors on how do we do a better job of engaging with the corner bakery about their real challenges. And then we can get to the point of prescribing the right ways to solve the particular problem. The businesses that are growing are doing that. That's why you're seeing the huge growth in things like MSP business models. Because there's a lot of businesses out there that are like, I don't really care about this technology. I care about an outcome. Would you just do this for me? I'll just pay you on a monthly basis. Deliver me better quality control. Deliver me better customer satisfaction. That's how I'll pay you. That's a lot different than I want to implement a Hadoop cluster.
So being also customer centric and being able to listen and communicate better, right? And then I believe this is something that is your strong point. I know that you have developed a Constellation sales model, which helps facilitate sales processes in the organization. And, many companies that they might have a great product, but they still struggle with their sales. And I believe this being ability to listen to their customers might be playing a role in that. Tell us more about this Constellation sales model and how organization can actually leverage it.
So the sales, I'll redefine it a little bit. I wouldn't know that it's a sales model. It's a communication mechanism. Okay. So as I called out before in the AI space, last year there was more than 100,000 AI startups in the United States. So if we add up all of the businesses that are being started up, we're in a classic hype cycle of, all the way back into the early 2000s. There's going to be a lot of consolidation. There's going to be a lot of things that, go up really fast and then crash down just as quick. And we don't know where the ball's going to land. So, what we've tried to do is create organizing principles so that we can simplify the conversation and align it to an outcome. Okay, so if I know there's five different independent machine vision applications that can all approach driving customer intimacy in retail differently. One guy's going to be focused on NCAP engagement. One partner is going to be focused on speeding checkout. One's going to be focused on improving parking lot performance.
Mhm.
Okay, these are all critical things to increase customer experience in retail. The concept behind a constellation is how do we create a loose association of partners that are all focused on the same outcome and use it as a way to paint a picture in the customer's eye of what the future can look like. I mean, think about it this way. If I talk to you about, a class G star, and I tell you everything there is to know about hydrogen and fusion and, how, light waves come and photons heat the earth and all this, I'm down in the bits and bytes of how stellar mechanics work. But if I tell you, look at that pattern, it looks like a belt, doesn't it? Let me tell you the story
Mhm.
about what's going on with this loose association of stars. Oh, there's lights up there. Look, they have patterns. I can still educate you somewhat about the stars and why they twinkle different ways, but you're looking at the picture. You're looking at Orion's belt. A constellation does a similar thing in the business person's mind because what it's doing is it's painting a picture of what the possibility of an AI powered experience can be, even in a world where I'm not sure what the specific solution is going to be. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the specific technology is. It depends on what my vision is of what I'm trying to create. Hand that to the engineers and let them solve a problem. You increase your success rate by dramatically.
Got this. Yeah, that's very exciting. Rob, maybe you could tell me, and it's very so being able to motivate people, being able to foster innovation is a huge task for any
Of
business
course.
leader. What is it that you do to, to motivate your teams and to deliver outstanding results?
The funny thing here is that in large organizations, a lot of individuals, can feel like they get lost in the matrix. There's, oh, I'm just this small cog. I don't really. It's not my a little bit of, well, that's not my responsibility. That's not my problem. Um, I'm not a marketing guy. I have to just take whatever gets given. I think the thing that's worked well in my career has always been one of those outside in mentalities. Let's understand what we're trying to accomplish and then back into what are the things we need to get it done. Because then when we reorient back into the business, we can find the resources we need to solve the problem. Let's put it this way: it's very easy. It's not easy. I think it's actually harder to sit in the background and wait for someone else to give a plan. My philosophy is follow me. And when you teach people to think through the lens of I have a vision of how the customer is going to be impacted, follow me. It creates a really unique mechanism to rally everybody behind a common concept. You know, this whole idea of going after the ISV ecosystem and making people think about the fact that no, it doesn't make any difference that you deployed a proof of concept. How are you going to deploy it to 4,000 locations? Oh, we need to look at it across the technology, the marketing. Who are the services players that are going to guarantee success? Oftentimes, part of the key to driving success in this is to get people to back off from the idea that they're really that important.
That's
It's a
out.
team effort. We got to do this together, especially in these emerging technologies. That's Intel's philosophy in the way it deals with its ecosystem. And when our internal efforts do the best, that's also where it works the best, is when we're going, you have some unique knowledge, I have some, let's put it together and solve a problem.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful to actually let people know that they can make the impact, right? So not
Yes.
just sit back and wait, as you put this, until somebody leads you, comes up with a plan that you can be actually the one who is leading and comes up with solutions.
Well, and that's where you see in the ways that I communicate, in my out outward facing appearance, doing crazy stuff like dancing around in bunny suits in, with tech partners on stage in front of 1,000 people. It's all about giving people a sense of vision. If you can give somebody a sense of vision, like this is what we could accomplish, and then being willing also to take a couple steps yourself, step outside your comfort zone. Like, okay, the collateral isn't doing what you need. Well, what could it do? I mean, I don't know, sit down and write something. Well, I'm not a copywriter. It doesn't matter. Step into that area. I mean, we're to a point now where the tools are out there where you want to cut your own, edit your own video a little bit. You want to create some material. You want to write some code. All of these things are much more accessible. And so the key is start with a vision, rally people around you, and be willing to roll your sleeves up and do something and not wait around for someone else to set the path.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with you. It's like I can tell you that watching your videos and your presentations, you are probably maybe going outside of your comfort zone, but you are more on the level of your audience. Like you are using visuals, and also the part with the apples. How businesses, right,
Oh, yeah.
are taking out your piece of your business, right? And that's something that sticks with your head. So it's something also thinking outside the box, right? This kind of cliche, but this is something that you could have said, like, this is not right, that aligns with my, I don't know, goals or something. But
Yeah, and there's elements where I think from my standpoint, I've always done things like that that are a little provocative. The taking a bite out of somebody's business. It was a funny that video in my background I did for an Intel partner. It was an Intel and an IBM partner at the time, and it was funny because we handed out apples all across all over the place, and then going around and taking somebody's apple, and I literally had my cheeks filled with apple bits from everybody. And this is obviously pre-COVID because you'd never do something like this anymore. But for the time, wow, did everybody understand what industry disruption was? You've got to turn things you got to create mechanisms that people can relate to, so that they can go, okay, I get a sense of what's going on. And we're doing that same thing now in our Intel sales academies we're offering to our partners. It's all about helping them, perceive what does it mean, what are internal and external factors. And we use, for example, for internal factors, we'll put video, pictures of American football players up, and where the statement is, there's probably something getting in your way. How do you work around it? Okay, you got a picture of an old linebacker, and that's an example of an internal factor you need to work around, or an external factor. What's going to eat you? Picture of Jaws. Okay. Is your competition going to eat you? Is it going to be a government regulation? What are the things you have to take into account from the outside? Using mechanisms like that to connect the dots for people is pretty critical.
I cannot let you go, Rob, without asking the question about chips, right?
Okay,
Intel, yes, it's a huge company with the chip business, right? And we all know that there was a disruption in chip production that have impacted many industries, many businesses. From your perspective, is there any relief perceived in 2024 for the chip shortages? And I know
the perception we're getting is that we're definitely, I'd say, over the hump, over the worst of it. I think what we are seeing is the continued focus on supply chain resilience, especially given the political dynamics around the world, the increases in tension that exist in certain areas. I think there's a lot of efforts like the CHIPS Act, which was signed by Biden this year with Pat Gelsinger's help building this whole idea. Intel's vision is to be the chip manufacturer for the West. And that's a tall order because it's a change in the ways that we engage with our engagement with, our trading partners. But it's also a way that governments and, entities can say, okay, How am I not going to have this happen to me again? Um, in some ways, I'm actually, in many ways, glad that we sort of experienced that, because what we have to be conscious of is we can't, as as local entities, and I'm not even making a nationalistic statement here. We have a responsibility to take care of our community around us. We got to make sure the power's on. We got to make sure the water runs. We got to make sure that the food gets to the table, that the cars run. And silicon is in everything. I mean, it is the lifeblood of the new um, economies, and it's the path for a lot of growing nations to also leapfrog from where they are to move in new ways. Look at the role of 5G. 5G is a computer software defined radio infrastructure that only works because of ubiquitous compute. That's a moral statement of its availability to people. So if I'm a nation, I've got to look at my companies, my citizens. How do I make sure to have reliability on that? That's why we're building factories around the world. That's why you see, I think, regulations focusing on that. You're seeing investment coming from a lot of different areas, and you're seeing innovation then also blossoming in new ways. So we've created, great associations of what often could be considered, traditional competitors. I mean, who's ever heard of the fact that Intel is collaborating with people that make competitive chips like ARM and talking to them about how we can help and how can we leverage that? Well, that's because we have to disrupt it. We have to do something different if this is really gonna be the way that our world works. So I think it's an exciting time. There's been a lot of shifts in the ways that we manage ourselves internally. Some of that gets reflected externally, of course, in the ways that we split our economics, the way we roll our numbers to the street. Pat Gelsinger does a really good job of talking about this as, it's climbing a mountain. And it's a journey of it. The hardest part of getting to the mountain is getting to the top. And the closer you get, the harder it gets. And we've just been blessed with a really great leader who has got a good vision. But we've just also got just a fabulous team, I think, that's driving a lot of creative thinking. I'm glad to be part of it. I'm glad to be out there also driving the demand for what this can mean in the real world, because that's how we keep the factories full. And that's how the next generation of innovation happens.
I've seen the news about the Iowa chip factory, and I was thinking that is something that is going to change the strategic position, like for economists, right? Being less dependent on the foreign supply,
Yes.
right, and the economics and politics and whatever
Yeah,
turbulence.
and it's a fascinating dynamic at a geopolitical level. It's a really interesting innovation also relative to what individual countries can then also, build for themselves. I think, of course, it's going to go right back to the things like you brought up, the regulation around AI. It means that we have to have closer and closer partnerships between government and with companies, so that everything stays in balance. That's how we keep the world innovating and make this world a great place.
Yeah, Rob, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your insights, your expertise. I really enjoyed our discussion and looking forward to having you back one day.
Look forward to it. I really appreciate the time to chat.